Okay. Okay. Welcome everybody to the ZAG seminar. Today we are glad to have Anand Sawant from Tata Institute, and he will talk about near rationality properties of non-varieties. Anand, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to speak in the ZAG seminar. I'm very happy to speak here. So the talk is based on joint work with Chetan Balve and Amit Hogadi. Uh, okay, so I'm going to start a little slowly, introduce the main terms and results in a fairly informal manner, and then make it more precise. So here's a picture of near rationality properties of, let's say, smooth projective varieties over a field, which for me will always be of characteristic zero, although some of these things can be defined in arbitrary characteristic and do make sense. I'll always stick to characteristic zero, and I'll always stick to smooth projective varieties, although of course, I mean, we can make sense of, so smoothness is quite important here, although projectivity is not very important. Okay, so here are some so-called near rationality properties, and the relationship between them. And so just to recall what they mean, so here are the definitions. So variety is rational if it has an open subset isomorphic to an open subset of some projective space. Stably rational if after taking product with some projective space it becomes rational. So the one which might not be very familiar is the retract rationality, which means that the variety should admit an open subset, which is the retract of some open subset of some projective space. And this retract is in a very naive sense. It just means that there is a map in the opposite direction so that the composition is identity. So unirationality and rational connectedness will not really play a role in this talk. So in this talk, I want to introduce two more near rationality properties, and they are universal R triviality and universal Chow not triviality. So here is, I have written down some of the implications. So the converse implications don't hold. So there are famous examples of stably rational varieties which are not rational due to Boville, Kolyuthilin, Sansuk, and Sennett and Dyer. Then many examples of retract rational varieties, actually tori, which are not stably rational due to Voskresenski, and so on. So of course, whether unirationality is equivalent to rational connectedness is a big open question. I'll not talk about that. And okay, so let me talk about universal R. Let me introduce universal R triviality first. So the set of R equivalence classes of a variety is the quotient of it by the equivalence relation generated by the following naive one. So 2 points are naively R equivalent if there exists a rational map from P1 into that variety, which is defined at 0 and 1, such that it takes, 0 maps to 1 point and 1 maps to the other point. And of course, this need not be transitive unless you are in a very special scenario where, for instance, X has a group structure. In that case, this is so in that case, you don't it's already transitive, otherwise it is not. And so you need to take an equivalence relation generated by this simple one, and then you take the quotient, and then you get the R equivalence classes, and you say that a variety is universally R trivial if for every finitely generated separable field extension, this R equivalence classes, the set of R equivalence classes is a singleton. It's trivial. So of course, I mean, XF modulo R is the same as if you base change first X to F and then take rational points and then take R equivalence classes. So that's the condition. So the related condition of universal Chow not triviality is as follows. So if you, I'm not going to use universal Chow not triviality very explicitly in the talk. So if Chow not is the Chow group of zero cycles, so which, as we all know, is the quotient of the free abelian group on k rational points of X by rational equivalence, then this admits a degree map to the integers, and or in other words, if you take a general element, it would have this kind of a form. So it will be a formal sum uh, of this form, summation ni times pi, where pi is a rational point, and you just send it to uh, the sum of ni. So this is the so-called degree map, which goes from chow naught of x to the integers. And you can ask if this map is an isomorphism. So you say that your variety is universally chow naught trivial if for every finitely generated separable field extension of the base field, the degree map after base change is an isomorphism. So okay, so let me just make a comment about why we have this finitely generated separable field extension hypothesis. So this is, I mean, okay. Uh, I mean, we are over characteristic 0, so we need not mention separable every time, but you can make sense of, you can define many of these things when k is just perfect, and then you can talk about, you want to talk about field extensions that are, I mean, as variety is smooth over k. So then that's why, I mean, this condition comes into picture. But anyway, I will not say much about this. By the way, it goes without saying that, I mean, in case you have any questions, just feel free to interrupt me and ask. Okay, so it is known that universal R triviality implies universal chow naught triviality, but the converse is not true. Some examples are given in the work of Claire Voisin, but I will not go there. So let me introduce the main theorem in a vague way. So these are the terms that I'm going to define. So it says that so standard norm varieties played a crucial role in the proof of Bloch-Kato conjecture, where given a symbol in model K theory, you had to cook up a variety which has some nice properties with respect to the symbol. So the knowledge of Bloch-Kato conjecture or how it works is not really important for here. We are only interested in the varieties, and I will be introducing them soon. And so what I'm going to show is that, so what we showed in joint work with Chetan Palve and Amit Hogadi is that these are geometrically universally R trivial. So which means that when you base change to the algebraic closure of the base field, they are universally R trivial. So what was known before? So it appears in a work of Ashok that these are rational connected. These are rationally connected. This is fairly easy to obtain, but what is significantly harder is to show universal chow naught triviality, and this is done by Karpenko and Merkuriev. So it's a question asked by Arvind Ashok, whether these standard norm varieties have any of these properties over here on the top row, or even this one. And so this is just one step into going from here to here. So from universal chow naught triviality to universal R triviality. We don't have universal R triviality yet, but we expect something, and I'll mention it when the time comes. We are at this time, at this point, we are only able to prove geometrical universal R triviality. Okay, so now my next task is to introduce standard norm varieties. Anyway, I'm going to just say a few words about Milnor K theory and the Bloch-Kato conjecture, although the proof is completely independent of these facts. It's just to give you some flavor of what is going on. So the Milnor K theory is, so it's a graded ring, which is, so you take the multiplicative group of the field and consider the tensor algebra on it. So you write it additively, and then take the tensor algebra and go modulo this so-called Steinberg relation, which is of course defined by x tensor 1 minus x, which is you set x tensor 1 minus x equal to 0, and then you get a graded ring, and the nth graded piece is called the degree n Milnor K theory. And the Bloch-Kato conjecture, which is proved by Voevodsky and also depending upon the work of Marcus Rost, gives a precise relationship between Milnor K theory and Galois cohomology. So it just says that for any field f and a prime different from the characteristic of f, there is an isomorphism between mod L Milnor K theory, nth Milnor K theory of F, and the Galois cohomology of F with coefficients in mu L tensor with itself n times. So, or I mean, you can also write Étale cohomology for it. So the case n equal to 2 is the famous Merkurjev-Suslin theorem, in which case the right hand side becomes L torsion in the Brouwer group of F. Anyway, so this observation will not be crucial, but I mean, will appear in a very mild form later. Okay, so that's just yeah, to tell you where we are coming from. Okay, so now I want to now I come to the construction of the standard norm varieties, which is based on an idea of Voevodsky. So when the Bloch-Kato conjecture was proved, the existence of certain varieties called norm varieties was conjectured having some nice properties, and then the construction was given independently by Rost and then by Suslin and Zhukovetsky based on an idea of Voevodsky. So it is this one which I'm going to explain, and the norm varieties that appear through this kind of construction are called the standard norm varieties. So that's where the name comes from. And yeah, so what we are addressing is a rationality question about these standard norm varieties. Okay, so here's the setting. So take a field of characteristic 0 and take a prime number L. And for any smooth projective variety, consider its L-fold symmetric power. So you take the product of X with itself L times, and then you have the permutation action of the L symmetric group on it, and then you take the quotient. Now it's known that when X is smooth projective, the quotient exists as a scheme, but it's singular in general. If you drop the projectivity here, then there are it's not clear if the quotient exists even as a scheme. Yeah, so now of course this is singular, but if you the singular locus is very easy to see what it is, and you can throw it out and then you can get a smooth scheme. So the singular locus is the union of all partial diagonals. So of course yeah, it's clear what we mean from this, and if you throw this out and if you take the quotient, then the quotient exists as a smooth scheme. Okay, so this is this is about symmetric powers. So now here's the construction, so which might look a little complicated to begin with, but anyway, one doesn't need to recall the whole construction for what I'm going to talk about next. So okay, so now when we take the L-fold symmetric power, you can do it in two steps. So you can take the do the L minus 1 fold symmetric power first, and then take the quotient map from X cross sim L minus 1 to sim L of degree L. And of course, now if you restrict to U, which is the smooth locus of this sim L, the map will be finite étale of degree L. Now, what you do is you take the structure sheaf over here, and then you just push it down. Take the push forward and then restrict to U, and then this is a so this is a locally free sheaf of rank L, and then there is a well-defined norm morphism. Which you can view as a polynomial of a homogeneous polynomial of degree L. But anyway, so anyway, the explicit description of the norm morphism is not really important. All that we will deal with is a hypersurface in this kind of a setting. So once you have this setting, you take the vector bundle, the associated scheme to the vector bundle. So the vector bundle E on U is obtained by taking push forward of the structure sheaf of X cross sim L minus 1. And you take the underlying scheme, and then there is this norm map which can be seen as a homogeneous polynomial of degree L, and given any unit in K, you can look at the norm hypersurface, norm equal to A, so whatever this polynomial is. Now this norm hypersurface is smooth over U and is geometrically irreducible, and this the proof of this given by Suslin and Zhukovetsky uses that L is a prime number. So this is quite important. And now you take a smooth compactification of this norm hypersurface. And so which of course exists because K has characteristic 0, you can use resolution of singularities. And this is what I call an XAL. And of course, there is some choice involved at this point. But anyway, so I'm going to be a little vague about this. So you make a choice of smooth compactification is involved in this definition of nx, a, L. So anyway, so all that we need to know is that we have, so we start with x, you take L-fold symmetric power of x, then you take its smooth locus, and on that smooth locus there is a vector bundle. You take the associated scheme, and inside that there is a hypersurface of degree L, and you take that you take the norm hypersurface over there, and you're taking a smooth compactification of that. That's the definition. So the explicit bundle and so on is not really important for what we do. So anyway, so by resolution of, so this is what I just said, you can, I mean, by resolution of indeterminacy, you can assume that this nx, a, L is proper and surjective over a smooth compactification of U. So, I mean, we had U, we had a variety over U, and then we had a norm hypersurface over there, and we took compactification there. You couldn't arrange that it is proper and surjective over a smooth compactification of U. And anyway, so the statement in blue that I have written at the bottom is what is precisely what I will use, not any explicit description. So it admits a proper surjective morphism to something birational to L-fold symmetric power. Are there any questions about the construction? Otherwise, I can move ahead to defining the standard norm varieties. Okay. Yeah. So here's how you go about it. So you take an integer greater than or equal to 2 and take units a1 to an in K. And so, of course, this mod L Milnor K theory, it was the quotient of this tensor algebra. So a symbol, you can, I mean, this ordered sequence a1 to an gives rise to a symbol which corresponds to a1 tensor, a2 tensor up to an. Anyway, so the symbol in Milnor K theory is not really important. All that is important is this ordered sequence of units. So the standard norm variety is defined inductively as follows. So you look at the first two, A1 and A2, and so I stated a few slides before that I stated the n equal to 2 case of the Bloch-Kato conjecture, which was the Merkurjev-Suslin theorem, which said that the symbols in K2 modulo L correspond to L torsion in the Brouwer group. So you take the cyclic algebra on this A1 and A2, and this corresponds to a Severi-Brouwer variety, and you take X to be this X A1 A2 to be the Severi-Brouwer variety associated with the cyclic algebra. Anyway, if you're not familiar with how this construction goes about, I mean, there's no need to worry, because ultimately, I mean, we are only getting results geometrically. So we base change to algebraic closure and then show something. So these Severi-Brouwer varieties are actually forms of projective spaces. So when you base change to algebraic closure, it just is a projective space. So I mean, these are as good as projective spaces given what I'm going to do. And okay, so now here's what you do inductively. So so for instance, if n is equal to 3, you would consider this smooth compactification of the norm hypersurface that I gave. So you would take this projective space, you would take the symmetric power, you take the L-fold symmetric power of it, you look at the smooth locus, then you look at this particular vector bundle on it, and then you take the given what A3 is, you look at the norm hypersurface norm equal to A3, and then you take its smooth compactification. And here, I mean, yeah, something strange can happen, and yeah, that's what makes the question difficult. And then you have to iterate this again and again. So of course, this depends only on the. So this depends only on the. So I have written on this slide that you take alpha to be this symbol, but it's actually, I mean, so this is not dependent on the symbol. I mean, it depends very crucially on the ordered sequence. So for instance, if you change this ordered sequence, so if you take an even permutation of this ordered sequence, you can check that you get the same symbol in K-theory, but it's not at all clear if the resulting norm varieties are in any way related, actually. So there is actually a conjecture regarding this, which says that equal symbol. So if you have two ordered sequences, A1, A2, AN and B1, B2, BN, such that the associated symbol is equal in model Milnor K-theory, then the resulting standard norm varieties are actually birational. This has been checked in various cases. So this has been checked when L is equal to 2, and this has been checked when N is equal to 2 and L equal to 2, I think. So yeah, so this so there is some evidence for this conjecture, but it's not at all clear how to go about it in yeah, in full generality. Okay, so yeah, so here's the precise version of the main theorem. So you take a base field of characteristic 0. The characteristic 0 assumption is quite important even in the proof. You take a prime and you take an ordered sequence of units A1 to AN in K. Then if you construct this X alpha as I described, and if you take its base change to the algebraic closure, then these are universally then this variety is universally R trivial. Okay, so yeah, so let me mention right over here what is expected. So for an arbitrary field of characteristic 0, we would expect it to be universally R trivial if and only if it has a K rational point. But yeah, at some point in our proof, yeah, I mean, we could not see a way out, but we expect this to be true. This would be kind of very much parallel to the result of Karpenko and Merkuriev, who show that standard norm varieties are universally Chow-not trivial if and only if they have K rational point. Okay, so I mean, I mentioned this some time back, but in the case n equal to 2, these are just projective spaces over an algebraically closed field. So I mean, rationality is clear, and yeah, so so this, I mean, of course, the construction of this standard norm varieties give us a kind of clear approach regarding how to go about it. So the proof is going to be obviously by induction. So let me explain the strategy once again. So recall that X alpha is the norm variety associated with the full ordered sequence A1 to AN. So you can go up to the n-1 stage. Let's call that X, and let us assume by induction that it is universally R trivial. And now this X alpha admits a surjective proper morphism to some smooth projective variety birational to the L-fold symmetric power of X. And now the strategy to show X alpha is universally R trivial is in 2 steps. So the first one is to obtain the following characterization of universal R triviality. So variety should be universally, in terms of its generic point. So variety should be universally R trivial if and only if it should have a K rational point, and its generic point should be connectable to it by a chain of P1s defined over the function field. So this is actually well known to experts. This is implicit in the, I mean, it's not explicitly written in this language, but it's implicit in the works of Kulithilin and Bruno Kahn. And then the second step is to use this criterion twice. So you show that any smooth projective variety birational to sim L is universally R trivial, and then you show that the generic fiber of this morphism from X alpha to W is universally R trivial. So a consequence of this step 1 is that if you have a generically smooth map such that the base and the generic fiber are universally R trivial, then the total space is also universally R trivial. And now you can use this in this for for these norm varieties and then conclude. So of course, the first step, as I said, is somewhat standard. So this step is somewhat standard, but this step is quite tricky. In fact, so our assumption that the base field is algebraically closed, I mean, we are base changing to the algebraic closure, actually makes this second statement, the last statement in blue, quite easy to obtain. The whole crux of the proof is actually contained in this, showing that a smooth projective variety birational to sim L is universally R trivial. So sim L is actually I mean singular, and I mean handling this actually I mean it gets quite complicated at some point. But anyway, so let me explain the easy part first. So here's the theorem, which is, as I said, is kind of well known to experts, but the proof is actually quite simple. So it's simple to, I mean, at least describe heuristically. So if you take with a smooth projective variety over a field of characteristic 0, then it's universally R trivial if and only if it has a k rational point, and the generic point can be connected to it by a chain of p1s. But these p1s are of course defined over the function field. Okay, so let's just assume for simplicity that there is just one morphism from P1 of kx to x, such that 0 goes to the generic point and 1 goes to a rational point. So by a k rational point, I mean one which is in the image of k rational points inside kx rational points. So now what you can do is you can spread this to P1 over some open subscheme u of x. And now it's clear that any point, I mean, not necessarily k rational, any point of u can be connected to x naught by a P1 defined over the residue field of that point by just taking a slice of this morphism. So how do you handle points outside u? And that's the only thing that is required. Anyway, so a small simplification is that you can just assume that, I mean, of course, we are claiming universal R triviality. We have to show that xf modulo R is trivial for every separable field extension f, but you can always base change to that field, and you can just assume that you can just work with the k rational points. That's enough. So I'll keep the statement of the theorem. So now we know that any point, so from the previous slide, we know that any point inside U can be connected to a k rational point. Now, what about points outside U? So we have to get them inside, and this is just done by a standard resolution of indeterminacy argument. So you take a k rational point which is outside U, and now you can find a smooth projective curve passing through x and x naught, which intersects U. So this is, of course, we are assuming that x is smooth. So you can find such a curve by taking general hyperplane sections passing through x and x naught. Yeah, our x is smooth, our base field is infinite, so there are no problems. So over here. So now once you do this, you can, so now this C intersects U, and I have a morphism from P1 cross P1 over U to X. So this actually gives me a rational map from P1 over C to X. Now, so C is a curve, so this P1 over C is a surface. So you can resolve indeterminacies of this map. And when you resolve indeterminacies, it only involves blowing up some points. So there might be some exceptional divisors floating around, but they are just P1s. And so it's now easy to see that when you resolve indeterminacies, these 2 points, you can go to the resolution of indeterminacies and come back to X, and you might have to use the exceptional divisor, which tells you that, of course, I mean, although we started with a single P1, to connect these 2 points, you might require more P1s, which will involve the exceptional divisors, but it's possible. So this is the basic idea, and of course, this I mean, this is almost a proof. So if you have a chain of P1s, the same thing goes through. So that's the idea of this theorem, and this is the consequence which I wanted to use. So if you have a generically smooth morphism of smooth proper varieties, then, and if the base and the generic fiber are universally R trivial, then the total space is universally R trivial. So this follows fairly easily by only staring at the following diagram. So, okay, let me explain how the diagram goes. So, I mean, why do these funny arrows exist? So, of course, this y to x is the initial arrow given to us. And so, of course, we are assuming that, so let me call the generic, point eta inside x, and let me denote by y eta the generic fiber over here. So that x is universally R trivial, which means that we have a chain of P1s. So let me write them by these wiggly lines, connecting this to a k rational point x naught, and the generic fiber y eta is universally R trivial. So this is a variety over the function field of x. So this means that the generic point of y eta, which is also the generic point of y, can be connected to an eta rational point. So of course, so this can be, so let me call, so its generic point can be connected by R equivalence, so to kx rational point. Now, this kx rational point actually gives you a rational section S, as I have written over here, and so you can resolve indeterminacy. So again, I'm giving an argument assuming that there is just a single P1. So I've written an R over here that just means R equivalence, but yeah. So assume that there is a single P1, then you resolve, then you get a rational section, resolve indeterminacies of this section, and then just get a chain in Y connecting the generic point of Y to a k rational point of Y. So that's the basic idea of the proof. So is this fine? Can I go ahead? Or yeah, because now there will be a kind of change of tracks. That's why. Okay. Yeah. So that's the argument. Okay. So now so I'm stating the main theorem once again for just convenience. And so okay, the step one was the characterization of this universal R triviality and this consequence that if the base and generic fiber is universally R trivial, then so is the total space. Now we come to the main part, which is I mean, how to actually show that X alpha is universally R trivial. So recall that it admits a proper surjective morphism to something, to a smooth projective variety birational to this L-fold symmetric power of the standard norm variety associated with the ordered sequence A1 to AN minus 1. And these are the two things that we have to get. We have to show that any smooth projective variety birational to sim L is universally R trivial, and we have to show that the generic fiber of this morphism from X alpha to sim L of X A1 to AN minus 1 is universally R trivial. So now, okay, let me point out here that in fact, showing that sim L of X A1 to AN minus 1, so this guy is universally R trivial, is actually quite easy. But the catch here is that, and by the way, it's also known that universal R triviality is a birational invariant of smooth proper varieties. But the catch here is that this guy is singular. So you can't, although you can show that this is universally R trivial, it doesn't help us much while showing that a smooth projective variety birational to it is universally R trivial. But of course, it also means that you just have to find one smooth projective model of sim L that is universally R trivial, and then you will know it for everything else. So that's what we do. So we actually cook up a model, a smooth proper model, smooth projective model of sim L that is universally R trivial. Okay, so let me address the the second question first, the universal R triviality of the generic fiber. So this actually uses some results from algebraic groups. So I'm not going to elaborate too much on this in this talk, but okay, let me indicate what kind of ingredients go into the proof of this step. So of course this is the generic. So there is a map, there is a morphism from X alpha to the L fold, so to some smooth projective variety birational to this sim L, and you are looking at the generic fiber of this. So so the function field of this is also the same as the function field of this sim L, and so look at this situation. So consider a separable non-Galois extension of degree L, and it's let K over F, and let L be the Galois closure. So so the situation is that Galois L over F is the symmetric group of on L letters, and Galois L over K is the symmetric group on L minus 1 letter. So you can clearly see what we are doing here. I mean, how it is going to be applied. Okay, so now you can look at GM. You can look at GM over K, and you can look at the way restriction, and corresponding to the norm map of fields, there is this norm homomorphism of algebraic groups. And okay, so given any unit in F, you can look at this norm hypersurface. So this is just given by setting norm equal to that unit A. Okay, and so of course you can show that I mean so if I mean so the norm equal to one hypersurface is non-empty, is not, I mean it's non-empty, and if you take the norm equal to a hypersurface, and if it has a k rational or f rational point, then you can check that this is actually isomorphic to the norm 1 hypersurface. And so here's a result of endo that we use actually quite crucially. So it's the part that we use also appeared in the work of Kolyutelin and Sansuk actually. So the result says that if you take the norm 1 torus corresponding, so this norm hypersurface is called the norm 1 torus. So corresponding to this extension is retract rational if and only if L is a prime number. So of course, we only use the part that which assumes that L is a prime number and then uses that this norm 1 torus is retract rational. But this is yeah, actually a quite nice result. And this is what we'll use. And we know that retract rationality implies universal R triviality. So such norm 1 tori are of course universally R trivial. And then you can also, I mean, yeah, show that any birational smooth proper model of this norm torus or norm hypersurface is universally R trivial. So this is basically the crux of the argument. And of course, this F, K, and L are going to be function fields of this varieties. So this L is the so F is the function field of this norm variety that we are dealing with. So this of not norm variety, sorry, is the L-fold symmetric power of this norm variety that we know is universally R trivial by induction hypothesis. This K is the function field of X cross sim L minus 1, and then L is the function field of the product, L-fold product. So this is the setting to which we apply this. And so since K is algebraically closed at each point, you are actually so since K is algebraically closed, you can check that X alpha always has a K rational point. And so otherwise it's not at all clear if so what we I mean so it's a K rational point, but it's I mean what we need is actually a K what we need is a K sim L X A1 to AN minus 1 rational point. So which we already have, and because K is algebraically closed, and that's very helpful for the proof. And hence you can apply the criterion and get that this generic fiber is universally R trivial by just appealing to the result of endo. But if we don't do that, it's actually not clear. It's not clear if this generic fiber over here in the title has a point over the function field. So anyway, but we hope that this is true. Yeah, it would be great if someone can actually achieve this. Okay, so now let me come to the proof of, so now, I mean, given that, so this step about showing that the generic fiber is universally R trivial is true, all it remains is to prove this theorem. So you take a smooth projective universally R trivial variety over an algebraically closed field, and so for any positive, so for this part, the primeness of L is not important. It was already used in the part that I just explained. So if you take any symmetric power of X and you take any smooth proper variety birational to this one, then it is universally R trivial. That's the that is what we are reduced to, and this is what we have to show. So yeah, as I commented some time back, it's easy to show that this symmetric power is universally R trivial, but the problem is that it's singular in general. But since universal R triviality is a birational invariant of smooth proper varieties, it suffices to construct just one smooth proper model that is universally R trivial. Okay, so the first thing is to find a nice way of, so of course we have some data about X, that it is universally R trivial. So of course we are going to use that the generic point can be connected to a K rational point by a chain of P1s. But starting from this chain, we need to get a nice way of getting chains of P1s on the symmetric power. And these chains of P1s are going to be, so these are P1s defined over the function field of the symmetric power. And so that's why some amount of care is necessary. And okay, so this is the trickiest part of the proof. So I'm going to, spend some time on this. So our X is universally R trivial, and our K, E, and L are these fields. I'm sorry about the notation. I think sometime back for the other part I used L for something else, but this is what I want. I'm sorry about this. Okay, so now so if you take the so K is so big K is the function field of X, and so if you take its tensor product with itself L times, it's an integral domain whose field of fractions is E, which is the function field of X, the product of X with itself L times. Okay, so now here is a way of getting an E valued point on the product from starting from a K valued point on X. So start with a point P over here, which is a K valued point on X. So you can take its product L times and get this part P to the L from spec K tensor with itself L times. But note that this is not a field. It's an integral domain, and then you can you can pull it back with the generic point and then get an E valued point on X to the L. Now, so now the trick is to observe that there is an SL equivariant isomorphism between, so if you take products of P1s on defined over the function field of X, you take the product L times, this is actually isomorphic to the product of P1 over the base field K, the product with L times and base change to E. So this is actually a little tricky, and this is what confused us for a long time. So let me just explain this. Let me take a minute to explain this. So suppose eta is the generic point of X, and so then you can look at this P1 over K as P1 over eta, and then you have its product with itself L times, and this product is over little k. Now what you can do is you can, so this product is over little k. So what you can do is that you can pull all these etas on one side, and then you can keep all the P1s on one side. So if you take these P1s out, you get these etas on this side. And this is precisely the generic point of X to the L. So this is the generic point of X to the L. So and that's why so this is an P1 over E. I mean this is over E. So this, you can see this as that's how this thing comes. So this is it looks very simple, but this was actually quite confusing when we were actually working with this. So now once you know, so of course note that the SL equivariance, actually the action on E is actually coming from the permutation action over here. So for this action, this is equivariant. And now, so of course, you start with a P1 defined over the function field, which say it joins P to Q. Then you can actually do this construction. So you can take the product of F with itself L times to get this one. Now, using this trick that I mentioned over here, so this is isomorphic to this product of P1. So P1, the product L times base change to E. And now you can use the diagonal from this P1 to P1 L times. And then you get so this left hand side over here is just P1 over E. And so now you have gotten a P1 over E inside x to the L, and this is SL equivariant. So after taking SL quotient, you get a P1 over L. And yeah, so this is the key part. So you get the P1 is actually over L into the symmetric power, which connects these 2 points, this P to the L and Q to the L, defined by this recipe. So anyway, so this is actually, I mean, for me was the most tricky point of the proof. Okay, so so now once you have a nice way of getting P1s over the function field of the symmetric power on the symmetric power, there is a fairly standard way to proceed. So now, of course, we know that X is universally R trivial. So we start with a chain of P1s connecting the generic point to a K rational point. And then you get a chain connecting eta to the L, which is the generic point of sim L, to X0 to the L, which is a K rational point. But the problem here is that this X0 to the L lies on the diagonal. So it's in the singular locus. So I mean, we have to somehow move this point, or I mean, find a nice desingularization where you would get a chain ending in a K rational point in the smooth locus. So how does so? Okay, so there are some problems with this. I mean, this is not going to give us the final answer. So of course. The nodes of the chain. So by this I mean that of course there is an eta, and then there is an X0, and then there are P1s which are connecting. So eta to X0 over here somewhere finally to X0, and so these are the points which I call nodes. So these nodes may lie in the singular locus, and yeah, so. So of course, X0 to the L is not a smooth point, but the point is, suppose we find a model and we lift this chains of P1 over L's. The endpoint lying over X0 to the L need not be K rational. So that's also a problem. So finally, we need to end in a K rational point. We need a chain of P1s ending in a K rational point. So that's what we have to arrange. So the first problem is actually easy to solve. So the nodes which are, so this is also a slightly tricky observation. So of course, there is a chain of P1s connecting eta to X0s, which I'm denoting by these wiggly lines. So you can ensure that none of the Yi are K rational. And so, I mean, of course, so this point eta is positive dimensional. So it's the dimension is the dimension of X. And so this is K rational. So this is a 0-dimensional point. So of course, what you do is you take a chain and you stop. I mean, of course, if it happens that some Yi is K rational, you take the first I such that Yi is K rational and you just stop there. Okay, so then in that case, all these the points beforehand are positive dimensional. I mean, you know what I mean. So these are positive dimensional points of X. These are not K rational. And of course, our K is algebraically closed. So there are no finite field extensions of K appearing here. So that also helps the matter. But anyway, yeah. So now the trick is to observe that the points. So now given these points, let's say, so these Yi's, if you take the Yi to the L, so the definition that I gave, you take the product and then you pull back by the generic point. if you take a positive dimensional point and you take this construction, this can never lie on the diagonal, although the kind of the formula that we have written indicates that it lies on the diagonal, but it's not, because we are actually pulling by the generic point. So this is a simple algebra exercise, except this x0 to the L, which is actually on the diagonal. None of these points are in the are on the diagonal or on any diagonal, and hence they are actually on the in the smooth locus. So we actually don't have to worry about this part of the picture at all. This actually lifts. You can find a nice desingularization so that this part lifts. So the whole problem is about this last curve. I mean, lifting it nicely. Yeah. So yeah. So this is what we need to do. So we need to connect this eta to the L to a k rational point in some smooth proper variety birational to sim Lx, and as you can, so of course the okay. So let me give a heuristic before I say what we are going to do. So yeah. So the heuristic is as follows. So now here you have a. So look at. So focus on this last P1, which is joining a positive dimensional point to a k rational point, and so this is a positive dimensional point. So you can actually see this as a family of P1s parameterized by some positive dimensional variety, and so it's a family of P1s parameterized by some variety, but these P1s are coming together at this k rational point. So the hope is that when you blow this point up, this will come apart. And of course, when they come apart, you have to worry about, I mean, it can happen that of course they don't come apart, but this will not happen if you keep blowing up finitely many times. I mean, after blowing up sufficiently many times, they will have to come apart. Now, the point is that, of course, what about the lift of, so of course you can keep blowing up this x0 to the L, and then at some point this family will come apart. So this requires a standard spreading kind of argument, which is kind of standard for birational geometers. You can find the details in the paper. I don't want to go into technicalities right over here, but okay, even when this family of P1s spreads apart, it's not clear if the lift over x0 to the L is going to be in the smooth locus. So what you can what you can show is that after you blow up this x0 to the L and lifts and then pre-images of it, I mean, sufficiently many times, ultimately the lift will be positive dimensional, and by positive dimensional it will automatically not be on any of the partial diagonal, so it will be in the smooth locus. Now, of course, for the sake of bookkeeping, it's better to do the blow-ups first before taking the product and then the symmetric power, and so which is why I mean, C, as I have written over here in this last line, so the C was the curve joining YR to x0. So what you can do is you can you can do the blow-ups over here, and then look at the look at the image. So that's easier for the sake of bookkeeping. So what you do is that you can make you can keep doing blow-ups in x over x0, such that finally the endpoint above x0 is positive dimensional. And so if x tilde denotes that resulting blow up, and let's call the exceptional divisor T, then the lift of x0 to the L will lie in the smooth locus of sim L of x tilde. So this is what one can arrange. Now, once this is arranged, you can take a birational smooth proper model of this sim L of x tilde that does not touch this chain of curves and the lift, and you can resolve singularities outside, and then you can get a birational smooth proper model. So that's how that's the kind of heuristic idea of how the proof goes. So now, how to finish the proof? It's not so now the point that we have, I mean, we are able to connect this eta to the L, which is the generic point, to a k rational to a point in a smooth proper model of this symmetric power, which is above x naught to the L, but this point is positive dimensional. It's in the smooth locus, but it's not a k rational point. You still have to ensure that this point can be connected to a k rational point. So how does one do this? It's just observe that this point, which is lying over x naught to the L, lies in the symmetric power of the exceptional divisor. Now the exceptional divisor, this is of the blow up x tilde to x. Now this is just obtained by blowing up k rational points. So the exceptional divisor is just some projective space, and it's an old result of Matuk. Actually, by the way, I think a proof of it was given by Matuk in 1968. I believe that was the first published proof, and it's a beautiful one paragraph proof, long proof of this result, that if you take a rational variety and if you take its symmetric power, it's again rational. Yeah, you can find the reference in our paper. It's due to Matuk, and so this is rational, and so now this has a nice open subset which is isomorphic to an open subset of some projective space, and so there are plenty of k rational points there, and if our point y lies inside this open set, you can easily connect it to a k rational point by a p1. So that is quite easy to obtain. What is slightly difficult is what if this if you take the largest open subset which is isomorphic to a projective space, and what happens if this point lies outside that one? So then you can always approximate it by a rational curve which is lying inside that open subset, and you can bring it inside. So of course one has to carefully argue this point, but using rationality one can show that if you have this point lying outside you, then you can have a rational curve connecting it to a point inside you, and then further you can connect it to a k rational point. So this part is I think this part of the argument, we have written down all the details in our paper, but I think this kind of argument is standard to rational geometers, I believe. Okay, so this is basically this concludes the proof of this main theorem, which I stated many times now. But yeah, and this is what leads to the proof of geometric universal R triviality of standard norm varieties. Now, if you look at our paper on the archive, it's actually written in the language of A1 connectedness, and I mean, it looks quite homotopy theoretic, but as you saw, the proof was fairly clearly algebro-geometric, but we believe that there are some connections between the notion of A1 connectedness in the sense of Morel and Voevodsky, and in the sense of, and with near rationality properties. So let me just end with a few open questions. So let me mention a conjecture which is, I don't know it is due to whom, but this is open for almost 40 to 50 years. So variety over a field is retract rational if and only if it's universally R trivial. So if you remember the picture that I showed on the very first slide, so retract rationality implies universal R triviality, but the converse is not known, and it's actually it's an open problem. So I mean, you can go back in very special cases, and it's known for, I mean, algebraic groups with some very specific properties. So the isotropic, semi-simple, simply connected. So this can be found in the Bourbaki article on the Kneser-Titz problem by Philippe Gilles. And but anyway, so it's very specific. I mean, a lot of structure theory of algebraic groups goes into the proof of this result. Okay, so for smooth proper varieties, it happens that, so I'm not going to go into A1 connectedness and A1 homotopy theory defined by, I mean, developed by Morel and Voevodsky, but it happens that universal R triviality is equivalent to A1 connectedness over for smooth proper varieties over a field. And so I view universal R triviality as a bunch of discrete data, in the sense that it's an information about the R equivalence classes in the base change of X over any finitely generated separable field extension. Whereas this A1 connect, the sheaf of A1 connected components is actually a sheaf in the Nisnevich topology. So it actually gives you an additional structure. And hence one believes that perhaps this notion, and of course for smooth proper varieties, this happens to be equivalent to universal R triviality. Over an arbitrary variety, this is unknown. But one can ask this question, these two questions that I have asked, which are perhaps more tractable, because just because the sheaf of even connected components has some structure, is if these if this notion is equivalent to retract rationality, or if it implies unirationality. And actually with this, I think I'll stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anand. If anyone has any question, please go ahead. Okay. Okay. In that case, okay, I would like to thank the speaker again on behalf of everyone here. Okay. Thank you. It was a very nice talk.
Thank you very much for listening.
And I must say that this is the last ZAG seminar this summer. We're going for a break for August, and we return back in September. Yeah, I wish everyone good holidays.
Yeah,
enjoy summer. If you in Northern Hemisphere, yeah. Okay, bye.
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 Bye. Thanks.
Bye, Om Prakash.
Yeah.